Internal Revenue Service IRS tax news. IRS offers how-to videos to help taxpayers apply for offers in compromise and avoid scams. IR 2021-229, November 17th, 2021, Washington. The Internal Revenue Service today unveiled a new how-to video series enabling taxpayers to avoid potential scams by considering and applying for an offer in compromise, an OIC, there's a link to that here, themselves, and avoid paying excessive fees to companies advertising outlandish claims. Now, the outlandish claims you might have heard of, these are the types of advertisements where they say, hey, if you have over 10,000 or 20,000 or whatever of IRS debt, give us a call and we're going to do this, that, and the other thing. You got to be careful about those types of advertisements, due in part to the fact that many of them aren't even representing one individual entity that they're basically advertising for. They're often going to be like an advertising type company that is then taking leads and then giving them out to basically random types of people. So you don't really know in that case from a particular advertisement oftentimes who you're even doing business with, because they might just be a marketing firm that is generating basically leads. So you got to be careful when you're looking for that type of service. There are good services out there for that type of service, but it's a little bit different than what like a normal CPA firm would do, because they're typically going to be dealing with tax preparation type of stuff and possibly audits and compilations. And it is kind of a specialty area to deal with like a substantial amount of debt kind of situation. Now, if there is a substantial amount of debt type of situation, there are typically different types of things that can be done. Possibly some of the time the substantial amount of debt was due to someone not filing who has a business and basically has a bunch of 1099s that piled up that are representing income that they didn't write any expenses against because they didn't file their tax return, and the IRS is basically charging them on their gross income instead of their net income because they're basing it on the 1099s. And in that instance, it might be the situation that if you were able to give some justification for expenses in that case, then that could lower the debt substantially. So that's one kind of group that often comes into place, people that just didn't file the tax return and therefore are not recognizing a lot of expenses. So that's one kind of group that can result in a higher tax bill. It can be actually a bit more complex of a situation because then you have to actually think about what the changes might be. So in other words, you might be saying, okay, did the IRS, did you actually file your tax returns? If you did not file your tax returns, then how did the IRS assess the liability? Did they do so fairly, or possibly did they do so just with the information that they had, which was 1099s, which just reports the gross income and so on, and then try to go from there. The other thing that could happen, and this is more likely kind of the advertisement or the implications of the advertisements for the offer and compromise, would basically be, this is just like a recap or paraphrasing of it. And again, you can look at this in more detail, but you're in essence saying, hey, look, I'm not going to try to talk down the liability and argue that the liability wasn't a legitimate charge under basically the law. Instead, at this point in time, I'm basically going to say, hey, look, it's in both of our best interests for you to lower the tax liability due to the fact that there's no possible way that I can pay this tax debt. There's no way I can pay it. And therefore, you, as the person that I owe money to, similar to a creditor situation, are also in a beneficial situation, IRS, government, by lowering the tax liability so that we have a situation that is sustainable and I can actually I have a chance of actually paying the tax bill. So that's a different kind of argument there. And you can imagine what the IRS is going to ask for when you make that type of argument, right? They're going to say, okay, well, do we believe you that you actually don't have the means to pay your tax bill or not? What are we going to need? We're going to need your financial statements. We need basically the tax forms are going to be, in essence, a balance sheet and an income statement. And then you have to verify basically what kind of assets you have and so on and so forth. And then your income and so on and so forth. So that then you can basically come to an agreement that you might have kind of similar to like what you might do in a bankruptcy type of agreement, to come to accords to something that would be on the best terms for both sides. Now, the offer and compromise is actually fairly well defined. And you can imagine a situation if the IRS says, Okay, so you're telling me to lower the offer and compromise, and you're driving around like $100,000 car or something like that, right? That's not going to fly, most likely. Or, the IRS is going to say, why don't you sell the car maybe, and then start driving around like a $15,000, or something, so you can pay your tax bill. So you can imagine that, that's going to be kind of the thing that will happen in that type of situation. But notice that the actual format of filling out the offer and compromise needs to be somewhat structured, pretty well structured. So you can do a pretty substantial amount of research on the offer and compromise and get a really good grasp of it. And then if you want to get more help from someone else, you want to have a good baseline of the grasp that you have, and then see if you can get a recommendation to someone that has experience with these items from like a CPA or something like that, as opposed to going through an advertisement, which could just be a lead generation source rather than an actual firm, advertising. Okay, back to the text. Quote, "We encourage eligible taxpayers in real financial distress to consider looking into an offer and compromise to resolve their tax issues," end quote, said IRS Commissioner Chuck Rettig. Quote, "People also need to use caution with the program. Some companies routinely overstate how they can help with this program and clear up people's back taxes for penalties on the dollar, for pennies on the dollar. A quick visit to IRS.gov can provide important information to help people with this program," end quote. "An offer and compromise allows you to settle your tax debt for less than the full amount you owe if you qualify. It may be a legitimate option if you can't pay your full tax liability, or doing so creates a financial hardship. The IRS," so you can see a financial hardship, right? You can see where this is going. Again, you're not basically going to the IRS going, "You're wrong. You took the wrong position on the tax code, and I take the right position on the tax code. I'm justified in lowering my tax bill due to deductions," and so on and so forth. It's more like going and saying, "Hey, look, I have some financial hardship. There's no way I can possibly pay this. Look at my balance sheet and my income statement. I might have, it's a legitimate tax bill. I'm not trying to argue maybe that it wasn't. It's kind of like I'm basically saying that we're both better off here, you as in essence a creditor, by lowering the tax bill." And again, you can see where, what they're going to ask for that kind of situation, you would think, to see whether or not you could pay the tax bill, or if you actually have a financial hardship that would justify under the law for an offer and compromise. So the IRS considers your unique set of facts and circumstances when making that determination. The OIC offer and compromise program serves an important purpose for a select group of taxpayers. The IRS periodically warns against hiring or paying needless fees to this, quote, "offer and compromise mills," end quote, that contort the IRS program into something it's not and mislead people who have no chance of meeting the requirements while charging excessive fees, often thousands of dollars. So it can be somewhat of an extensive process to go through the creation of the offer and compromise, although if you spend a good amount of time looking at it, a lot of it's going to be laid out on the IRS website. But if you're talking about someone who, again, doesn't really have a financial hardship, and then they're not going to be able to get an offer and compromise clearly if you're not being able to say that you have a financial hardship in order to qualify for the offer and compromise. So you can get a fairly good idea of looking at that by just looking at the website, what the general idea is, and then think about hiring someone. Again, when you hire someone, possibly not going through just simply an advertisement, which could just be a lead generator, but rather going through, talking to someone, see if you find someone that specializes in an offer and compromise, which is a little bit difficult. So the OIC mills are listed in the last two annual IRS Dirty Dozens. There's a list to that here. List of tax scams to avoid, quote, "Encourage taxpayers who may qualify for an offer and compromise to watch these videos and review information on IRS.gov to help them determine if the program is right for them," end quote, Rettig said. Quote, "Don't go to costly promoters advertising on television or radio who can make an overstated claims or suggestions that the IRS will accept an offer and compromise with even reviewing your situation at first, if they do not review your situation at first," end quote. The video playlist marks another improvement for IRS online educational videos by breaking the video's information out into easy to navigate chapters and sections that coincide with the layout of the OIC booklet and forms. It also offers taxpayers the ability to bookmark information they'd like to revisit later. The new OIC video playlist, there's a link to that here, provides an overview of the OIC program, forms, and pre-qualifier tool for help to getting started. Step-by-step walkthrough of Form 433-A and B OIC. There's a link to that here, which are known as, quote, collection information statements, end quote, basically kind of like financial statements, balance sheet and income statement on the personal side, generally, I believe, and needed for individual and business related offers. A step-by-step example of how to complete the OIC application form 656. There's a link to that here, and a finalized checklist to ensure everything needed is included to submit a valid offer. The vast majority of tax professionals are honest and don't make false claims about getting taxpayers special deals that only they can get. Taxpayers should consult a trusted, reputable tax professional when needed. The videos and web materials make it easier for taxpayers to navigate the OIC process on their own. IRS.gov contains complete information on the collection process and payment options. Publication 594, the IRS collection process, there's a link to that here, also provides helpful information on the option available to taxpayers. Form 656 booklet, there's a link to that here, provides detailed instructions for submitting an OIC and includes all of the necessary financial forms. Some taxpayers may not be required to pay the $205 OIC application fee or the required payments depending on their income and the basis of their offer. Taxpayers can determine if they qualify for the waiver of the fees payments by consulting the low income guidelines in Form 656. The low income guideline exception applies only to individuals. All publications and forms are on IRS.gov, or taxpayers may order copies by calling 800-829-3676. All publication and forms are available for free. Taxpayers may feel they need the assistance of a qualified tax professional to prepare and submit an OIC. Taxpayers may contact local or state tax professionals, associations for enrolled agents, CPAs, or attorneys to locate someone who has the education and experience to assist them. There's a link to some of that information here. You can see the phone number if you want to check that out and so on, and the videos and whatnot, and there'll be a link to this in the description.